Hey guys, check it out. That is our new to us 1991 Saab 900 Turbo convertible that we just bought for $2,500. And in this video, I'm going to tell you why a classic Saab may be the best investment you'll ever make. Now, Saab is a really interesting company that started building cars way back in 1949, and throughout the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, they built truly brilliant cars. And then in 2000, GM acquired the entire company and they started building some pretty decent cars. And then in the mid-2000s, they started building some okay cars. And then in 2011, they started building no cars whatsoever. So this is a dead brand here in the US, but it is a properly cool piece of history. And they built some amazing cars, such as this 900 Turbo. The Saab 900 is a model Saab built from 1978 all the way up through 1994. And it is one of the wildest, coolest, and quirkiest classics you can possibly buy for a relatively small amount of money. And everything is weird and wrong about the Saab, starting with how you get in the car. Now, looks like a pretty standard door handle, doesn't it? Except you can't pull it, it doesn't hinge up. In fact, this door handle has just this little delicate chrome handle behind the actual piece. You pull that, and then the door pops open. And listen to the sound when you close the door. Oh my goodness, that is just incredible. That is Mercedes level of quality. I'm talking like 80s Mercedes levels of quality. And that's because these Saabs are beautifully made. We're gonna start a tour of the 900 Turbo with what's underneath the hood. But just getting to the engine is a crazy experience. Now, there is a pretty standard latch under the dash, and you pull the latch and the hood pops open. Alright, so probably not that weird. The hood is popped open a few inches. Let's just undo the latch here and lift it up, except it doesn't lift up. This is a full clamshell hood that rides on these little rollers. It pops open, extending in front of the car, and then you push down on the front of it, and the whole hood hinges forward, giving you some of the best access to the engine of any car I've ever seen. Under the hood of the Saab 900 Turbo is a 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. By modern day standards, that doesn't sound all that special, but keep in mind when the 900 debuted in the late 70s, turbocharging was still a very advanced technology, and this 900 Turbo is a brilliant example of that. This car incorporates something called an APC, which debuted in 1982, and this is a technology that will actually derate the engine to run on lower octane fuel using NOx sensors. Pretty advanced stuff for the 1980s. It also has 16 valves, and it's rated at 160 horsepower, 188 pound-feet of torque. Once again, not a whole lot by modern day standards, but if you look at its competition in the 1990s, it was a pretty respectable horsepower number. Even something like a big old 325i convertible with a straight 6 developed 164 horsepower, so 160 HP and 188 torque is pretty solid. Now, driving these old turbocharged cars is definitely an interesting experience because it's not like today. Today, the turbocharger is immediate and it is forceful. These old cars are much more gradual and they take a long time for the turbo to spool up. So I'll give you an example. Floored, nothing. 3,000, now we're moving. And it doesn't give you that punch like a modern turbo. It's more of like a gentle whoosh. And actually the sound is different too. You know, modern turbos are a hiss. They're like... Sorry, that was weird. These old turbos are more of like a whoosh. They're like a vacuum cleaner. Oh yeah, listen to that Dyson, and then off you go into the horizon. Now the interesting thing is, this is not a slow car by really any means. It's pretty quick. Once you get into 4,000, 5,000 RPM, the car really shoots down the horizon. Pretty well, I'm impressed. Saab was a company driven by engineering and safety, and one of the best examples of that is this fuse panel, which is better than I think any car I have seen in my entire life, because most cars have their fuse panel hidden underneath the dash. You're under there with a flashlight in your mouth, trying to find the right fuse that's labeled with some alphanumeric code, and then you're referencing a manual. Terrible design, not in the Saab 900. They've got their main fuse panel here, in sight, under the hood. Everything is labeled not by some weird alphanumeric FJ23, but by what it is. For example, number 7, turn signals, 15 amp. What a concept! Then what I do is I simply twist off these 2 little screws. There's a weather tight seal, and look at this. The fuse panel pops off, and I can change it. Another nice and thoughtful feature under the hood of the Saab is the oil cap, which looks pretty standard. You turn it half a turn, but when you go to pull it out, you'll notice it's also the dipstick. This is a really cool design as well. Check out this hood vent here on the upper left-hand portion of this massive clamshell hood. This is, believe it or not, functional, and you can actually see right where it feeds into this little hole up here by the cowl, and this is your fresh air vent. And what this vehicle does is it sends air directly through the hood into the fresh air vent and then through a set of vents on the dashboard that are dedicated just for fresh air. Now, closing the hood on the Saab is very simple and extremely satisfying. Basically, you hinge the hood down, and it is a massive piece of sheet metal, but it is assisted, so it's nice and light. And then there are these little rollers on the front side of the hood that glide gently down these channels, and when you get close, you just push down, and now the hood is closed. The next thing you notice about driving an old Saab Turbo, it's so comfortable. I don't understand how they can make a car so comfortable and yet handle so well. Modern performance cars are stiff, they're aggressive, you hit expansion joints, you feel the whole car just shake. This car is buttery, it's smooth, but yet it doesn't roll around all that much. It's an amazing combination. And the seats are incredible. They're supported, they're comfortable. Saab could do this in 1991. Why can't manufacturers today make a good seat? Here comes the whoosh, whoosh, and then off you go. This Saab is a very purposeful design, and everything has a purpose. Everything is here for a reason, such as these little washers on the headlights. This actually has a little tube going to them, so they should squirt, and then these itty bitty wipers will sweep the headlights to clear them of debris and snow and ice. A classic example of 1980s engineering that is simple but works brilliantly. Another thing I love about the front end of this car is not only the turbo badge on the grille, but these fog lights underneath. They have these factory covers on them, and when you peel them off, how cool is that? I think that is brilliant. A really cool piece of engineering and design. I think this one probably needs to be replaced because it's full of more sand than the Saharan desert, but we'll address that. Saab has a long history of designing and building some of the best airplanes in the world, and a lot of that thinking translates to their cars as well. Take a look at this windshield. It is extremely curved and wraps around the entire length of the vehicle, giving that driver that cockpit-like view that they would experience in something like a fighter jet. It's really well designed and adds to the safety of the vehicle because I can see and look and know exactly what's going on around the entire front of the vehicle just from sitting in the driver's seat. Everything is just so incredibly weird and interesting in the Saab, and it starts out with how you start the engine. Now, you've got a normal key, it's got Saab on it. It looks pretty cool, but it's, not all that unusual until you go to put the key in the key slot because you'd expect it to be up here in the column, but it's not. Is it up here in the dashboard? No, in fact, the key actually lives down here in the center console by the handbrake, and Saab has been doing this for many, many, many years at this point. And there's a couple theories as to why the key lives down here. One of them is, probably the most generally accepted theory, is that if you get in an accident, you don't want your knee moving forward and bursting into the key when it's in the ignition, potentially breaking your kneecap. By putting the key down here in the event of an accident, it's completely out of the way of any potential injury. So to start the car, put the key down here in the center slot, turn it to on, just like every other car in the world, the dash lights up, and then turn the key, and the engine comes to life. The whole interior of this Saab is very driver-centric, which was pretty groundbreaking back in the 1980s, and the idea is that everything that the driver needs to touch and access easily is on top of the dash. So for example, the radio lives right up here by the very edge of the dashboard, and when you're driving along, you're looking forward to adjust the radio, and you just have to glance down briefly to change the volume or the presets, and then it can continue driving down the road. But it's very driver oriented. It's not so extreme where the passenger can't reach like the heater controls, but definitely tailored toward the person in the left seat. And the other cool thing are the gauges. Once again, very thoughtful in their approach. So I've got my speedometer front and center, very no nonsense, very easy to read. Then I've got a tachometer on the left, fuel temperature, a clock, and my favorite is the turbo boost gauge. How brilliant is that? Unfortunately, it doesn't work on this car. We have to get it fixed. I'm quite sure the turbo works, but the boost gauge just reads right in the middle all of the time. The Saab 900 has easily the most confusing climate controls I have seen in my entire life. So we'll start with the fan, which is the smallest switch. It's got positions 1, 2, and 3, but no position 0. So you're probably thinking, well, how do you turn the fan off? Good question. You actually have to go over here to the air distribution dial, and this one has a bunch of cryptic arrows that point in every direction, but none of which that make a lot of sense. So first of all, these here in the center, these vents in the center, these are only for fresh air. So you can turn these on and off depending on how you want them, but these won't blow heat or cool on you as far as I know. And I say as far as I know because look at how confusing this is. So I'm gonna try to go through all of the controls, see if we can figure them out together. So that is defrost vents open. Those are up here on the top of the dash. That makes perfect sense. This one is floor and defrost vents open. All right, so that makes a lot of sense, but these two in the middle are turned off. And then we've got floor vents open, but interestingly enough, in the floor vents open, these side ones also turn on. Not quite sure how that works. And then we come over here. The down arrow is floor vents and central panel vents fully open. So that's gonna be everything, apparently. This one is everything as well, but with two different arrows. And then this one is max airflow for rapid cooling. Ooh, look at that. I'm not quite sure what any of this means. It's quite tricky to use. You're gonna call me an idiot in the comment sections below. I know it, but it's just total hieroglyphics to me. What I do understand is there's a big button here for the air conditioning, and then there's a button here for a recirc, except it doesn't really look like a car on this logo. It's more of like the Pizza Hut logo with a little Monopoly card in the center. This Saab, believe it or not, has its factory Clarion radio in it, with cassette, of course. You've got presets, Dolby digital surround options, but you've got your normal balance and you've got your bass adjustments down here, as well as treble. But here's where things get interesting, because the turbo also came standard with this Clarion Saab equalizer. How cool is this? It's nowhere near the actual radio. It's way down here below the dash, probably because Saab figured you wouldn't be playing with it too much. But take a look at these little dots. You can adjust the frequencies so that you can have the perfect sound for the perfect audio situation. And they actually give you an entire manual on here that tells you how to use the equalizer. It's several pages long, and you actually have different presets which you can set up for, in this case, jazz, classical, voice, and rock. And our videographer Alex wondered, what about rap? I promise you no college professors driving these Saab 900 Turbos, Alex, ever listened to rap. So that probably wasn't even in the Saab vocabulary back in 1991.
90s rap, come on, Tommy.
Oh my goodness. You really think that the math professor driving this to the Colorado School of Mines is blaring, what's a 90s rap? Snoop Dogg? Small Wayne? Is that?
Small Wayne, there you go.
The Saab 900 came with a choice of a couple of transmissions. The cool one is the 5-speed manual, but we don't actually have that in this car. Instead, we have a 3-speed transaxle, which is not ideal, but keep in mind this car is more of a cruiser than anything else nowadays, and most convertibles back in the day had a 3-speed auto. So you've got park, reverse, neutral, drive, 1 and 2, and then you've got a little button on top to change the gear. But if you actually want to take the key out of a Saab, you have to be in park before you can remove the key. If this was a manual transmission, believe it or not, you'd have to be in reverse before you could pull the key out. Back here in the Saab, you'll notice 4 switches. These are your power window controls, except they are completely backwards. Now the front one's handy enough, have this little rib, so if you're driving along you can just feel for the front window controls, and these are, believe it or not, automatic windows, which I really appreciate. The back ones are manual windows, you just have to push and hold the button, but it's worth noting that they're backwards, so when you push it forward you'd expect the window to come up, but it goes down. To put the window up you actually have to push backwards. I'm not sure if that's because our car is broken or if that's how it was from the factory. Leave me a comment in the comment section below. The Saab 900 convertible here has a switch that turns on the dome lights. Depending on the position, they'll turn on or off or come on with the door. And it's worth noting that the 900 convertible also had these funny little lights in the rear to illuminate, I don't know, the rear passenger's knees. I think they're supposed to be map lights, but I'm not really sure what they're there for. This Saab 900 convertible is pretty much fully loaded, and as such you get heated seat. I said seat on purpose because there is only one, and it's for the driver. You've got 3 positions, 1, 2, and 3, but if you're a passenger and you want your butt to be warm, better buy your own Saab. This car has power mirrors. That is pretty cool stuff for 1991, but it has 2 different switches. One on the right here for the passenger mirror, and one all the way on the left here for the driver mirror. They hadn't quite figured out that little switch that'll allow you to use one actual dial to adjust both mirrors. This Saab does have mirrors that fold, but they are not very traditional. Surprise, surprise, to fold the mirror, you push in on the actual housing, and then it clicks and this little foot extends, keeping the mirror folded. To unfold the mirror, you push in one more time, retract the little foot, and then the mirror pops back out. This Saab has power locks, but you actually actuate them from the driver's side plunger. So push down the driver's side plunger, both locks go down, pull them up, and then both locks pop on up. The Saab 900 was available in several different body configurations, ranging from a 4-door sedan to that iconic 3-door liftback to this convertible, and I really do like this convertible a lot. They built over 900,000 Saab 900s, only about 40-some thousand were convertibles. It also has a very usable trunk, so first of all, big duck spoiler here for the turbo models. There's a little trunk pop underneath the lid. Pull up on that, and the lid rises to life, and there's a couple of interesting things. First of all, the trunk is surprisingly massive for a convertible, both top up and top down, a lot of storage capacity. Second thing you'll notice back here, space saver spare tire hidden under this little flap. I'm quite sure that's the original one. And then third thing you notice, a secret cubby located underneath this rear floor. So pull up on this, and wow, what a mess. This car needs a super good clean, but take a look at this, additional storage as well. And there's this cover, which if you look on the back of it, this is the cover for the punctured wheel, so you don't get the trunk dirty in your Saab 900 if you're changing a spare. A lot of cleaning we need to do, but overall a very solid car. And check this out. These are the massive springs that actually support the trunk up and down. Crazy design. They extend when you put it down, and they retract when you put the trunk up. A little bit of history about this particular Saab. This was bought brand new by a lady named Sandy in Minnetonka, Minnesota, and she owned it from 1991 until about her passing in 2016, and kept meticulous records, just hundreds and hundreds of records about this car. She would bring it in for like the smallest things, every little rattle, even smell. She one time brought it in because the trunk smelled weird. Believe it or not, her daughter inherited this car, and then we purchased it just yesterday. But some other cool things, I mean, take a look at this. This is the original dealer. Maury's, Saab, Subaru, and Alfa Romeo. What a weird combination of vehicles. But I want to demonstrate how well made these cars were by showing you the warranty and service record booklet. These were given to you when you bought a car, and they were to help you keep track of your ownership. So for example, I'll give you an example like this. The 1,000 mile break-in service was done on June 12th, 1991. And typically these go to like, I don't know, 50 or 100,000 miles, and then after that it's all on you. And this car goes to 50, and then it goes to 100,000 miles, and then it goes to 120,000 miles, and then it goes to 142,000 miles, and then 150, and then it just keeps going, and keeps going, and keeps going, all the way up to 210,000 miles. Check that out. That's a 210,000 mile major service. This just goes to show how well made these cars were. They supported these cars all the way down the life of the vehicle. And it's very common to see these with 180, 200, even 300,000 miles on them. They just go and go and go. Now this car has problems, as you'd expect for $2,500. For example, I'm not really sure the steering column is actually attached to the car. It is that wobbly. It leaks something quite profusely from underneath, but it's pretty solid other than that. The brakes are good, the engine is strong, the suspension feels good, the interior isn't all torn up. For $2,500, you get a tremendous amount of car. I mean, nowadays it's somewhat unusual to find a running and driving and reliable car for $2,500, period. Then to find one that has a turbo on it, then to find one that's a convertible, and then to find one that's rust-free with 118,000 original miles and a one-owner car. How cool is this? I am over the moon, and you just know these cars are gonna appreciate. We made a lot of turbo 900s, but a lot of them have ended up in scrapyards or have been crashed by now. A lot of them have been rusted through. So the ones that are around, you're gonna wanna start looking for and start buying up. We started shopping for a 900 turbo in the liftback coupe with the SPG performance package in black with a manual transmission. Couldn't find one of those. Around the country you see a few of them. They either have 400,000 miles or they've been crashed or they are rusty. So we ended up with this. It was $2,500. It's probably just as fun, you know, because it's a convertible. I mean, it's a slush box automatic, it's a 3-speed, but it shifts smooth. It gets you down the road when the turbo hits, and it's just a hoot to drive, so I'm not complaining. The Saab 900 convertible came standard with an alarm system, and they give you this perfect little tic-tac box to unlock and lock the alarm system. And the cool thing about this too is it does actually incorporate with the starter, so that if the alarm goes off, you can't start the vehicle. Of course, it's got a siren, but underneath the passenger seat, way hidden underneath there, there's a little button for a valet mode as well. Now you're probably asking, why don't you demonstrate the alarm system? No chance in heck, because there is nothing more complicated than a 1980s vehicle alarm. I don't think a scientist ever has figured out a way to deactivate a 1980s or 90s alarm system once it's been activated. It's like a mystery to mankind. So this box is going hidden away deep into places where it can't harm me. Interestingly enough, these Saab convertibles used a fully automatic top. It was not a manual top, and that sounds pretty scary by modern standards if it fails, but hopefully this one won't, and I don't think it will because they were pretty well engineered. So I'm going to start the engine. It's going to be first. Alright, and then I actually have to put the handbrake on, and then up here in front of the shifter there's a little toggle that says roof, and I push that button and the roof glides into life. And then with the roof up, I simply close it like this, pull down just a little bit with my hand, and then engage this hook system. Come on. Just like that. And that will seal the front header of the roof into place so we don't get any leaks. Now I mentioned this Saab was $2,500, and for that, you can't really expect the car to be perfect, and indeed this one's not. This is by far the biggest issue. The glass has decided to no longer be part of the top anymore and is staging a revolution to escape into the trunk area. So this is going to have to be fixed for sure so that we can park this outside. I do really like how Saab incorporated the door handle into the door panel. It's a very elegant solution. It's just this small little chrome strip. You pull out on it, and then that unlatches the door. You've got this nice sturdy grab handle to latch onto to close it. Guys, let me know in the comment section below, what do you think of our new Saab 900 Turbo convertible? I am really ecstatic about this car. I love these 80s vehicles. We're gonna fix it up, fix this horrible steering column, fix the top. It needs tires desperately, and then just enjoy it this summer. Head over to tflcar.com for the latest and greatest in new car reviews.